everyone, Miners Forge here, and welcome to my first video, which it should have been like my 5th, 7th, or 10th, but my first video on my Minecraft city, Tropillo. Yes, this is a Minecraft city, and I'll show you a lot more in the future. I've actually built quite a bit of stuff. However, I kind of want to actually make a video and show off my progress so far. If you followed me on Reddit a little bit, you have seen some of the progress for the city, but this is going to be my first, like, big, in-depth review, not review, but look over of this Minecraft city I've been making. Now, I did want to mention that I am using a couple things. I have sodium, iris, and voxy. Normally, people will be using distant horizons, but I'm using voxy for my distant render distance. But I think I'm going to start, and also bliss shaders because it's compatible. I'm going to be using, well, starting off with Old Town. So this area of the city, which is, if you see my cursor, roughly basically this section of city. Yeah, that section of city. This is Old Town. So this is where, like, the city started, so you'll find some of the oldest buildings in the city, at least lore-wise, and also technically in reality, because this is where I started building the city. So you'll have these really old, like, 1500s buildings that are somehow still standing because they're brick. And then you have all of this is a school, a brick house school. It has no yard, so except for the top up here where you have this kind of play area with some fencing to stop people from jumping off. Pause. Anyway, so the kind of the theme of the Old Town is chicken. You know, just a chicken with an egg. Stone chicken. Because in the lore, this place is a colonial city, or at least it started as a colonial city. So kind of took inspiration from New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, a lot of Los Angeles, and a lot of Tokyo and Chongqing. Actually, this building right here is inspired by a building in Los Angeles on Broadway. Yes, there's a Broadway in Los Angeles. So if you come over here, this is not necessarily a church, it's a clock tower. Maybe it will be a church. I haven't decided on the interior. Most of these buildings do not have interiors yet. And this area, since it's so old, has a very continuous, very dense, almost European-style development, European-style buildings in a lot of places. And you have just old bricks kind of laid out on the ground. There is a dumpster here because... No, sorry, this is a parked car, not a dumpster. It looks like a dumpster, but it's a parked car. And even though it's the middle of the city, since it's so old, you don't always have tall buildings. So you'll have these townhomes that are pretty small and cute. And if we come over here, we have this little shopping center, which I think is pretty cute, pretty nice. And something I borrowed from Norway and Denmark and whatever, all the continuous sidewalks. So this is a continuous sidewalk, which basically acts as a giant speed bump for vehicles. But this also has a dual purpose of acting as sort of a driveway, allowing vehicles, if they so please, to come onto the more pedestrian area and then park at homes. It's just not high speed, but only if you need access for something like a fire truck or police vehicles. Now, this is a new building, as you can tell. Very obnoxious looking compared to every very nice older style development. But, you know, they had to get some more people in the area, you know, keep prices down. You know, because if you build more homes, you lower rent costs and housing costs, meaning more people can live in an area, and you don't squeeze people out continuously. So this is actually a copy and paste building that I will have put all around the city, sometimes in blocks, sometimes just individually like this. And it does have interiors, but nothing at the bottom at the moment, but mixed use, you know, stuff like that. And you have a bunch of older, bigger buildings. Now we get into like 1800, late 1800s, early 1900s style buildings. Still some of those very old colonial buildings remaining. This style of building is also probably from the 1600s, something like that. Then you have, you know, 20th century old brick building. And then, yeah, so this area has a really cool detail that I really like, is that behind here, yes, you have a small parking lot. You gotta have some of them, but you also have this community garden. Now, the community garden is definitely not built atop a graveyard. I will neither confirm nor deny that it is built on top of a graveyard. And it even has this very cute little shed. Nothing in the chest, obviously, but a very cute shed. You have this community garden for this old area, old community. You know, old money probably lives here. You have your, you know, people moving in, but also a lot of people who aren't as, you know, people who would want fresh food and a nice community project. Yeah, and it's older, so parts of the infrastructure is a little more dilapidated in certain spots, so having a nice community garden for people to go to is just a nice use of space instead of another parking lot, even though there's a parking lot right next to it. Now, one thing you'll notice that these buildings are really close together because they were made a long time ago, so they have very close windows. But there's also this little courtyard back here, and I think it's a nice little spot to relax and just kind of exit your home and then just be here. It's all very nice and very quaint out here because you're nowhere near the road. So this is another roadway. You see I have some cars there, some trees planted, and yes, so this city is laid out on a grid pattern, which is what I designed it to have, with some minor deviations here and there, but for the most part, this is going to be a grid city with, when you get out, some variance for the terrain. Now we're kind of back where we started, and this is the main road going east and west through the city, and here we have one of the first buildings I built, WAFCO. So this is the WAFCO building. It is really cool, and kind of that late 1800s, early 1900s aesthetic. This is a major company, and they don't make waffles. I actually don't know what they do, but this is their office building, and they even put this adorable little chicken banner on the back. That is their logo, and this is the first little community that I built, and as you can see, it has a nice little central park and a bunch of townhomes all surrounding it. And yes, that does mean that there's this giant brick building behind you with no windows, but it has windows on the other side, so who cares? You don't have people looking into your garden, except you do, even though it's not really a garden, it's a park. Now, there are a lot of these little alleyways that I have put inside the city, and once you go through them, you'll end up back on the main grid. So you have these sort of internal areas, which are super pedestrian friendly. Then you have the roadways. Now, this building is actually complete, and it's one of my favorites. So this is a pizza shop, and it's just this very cute little pizza shop. And here you have the family that runs it, you know, family owned. They have a kitchen back here. You serve pizza. This is like one of those classic pizza spots in New York City. I've been to a few, well, one of them, classic pizza spots. And if you go through the back alley here, or laneway, if you watch Alpine, you'll know what that is. And then, yeah, these buildings' interiors are in fact furnished. You have your TV, you have this section here with the kitchen, and you have, you know, your bedrooms. Though I didn't, oh yeah, there's the kitchen proper. You know, you have your washing machine, dryer thing, oven, and that's here. And very important, every building is going to have a bathroom. So here we have the all-important toilet. Now, the other two floors of this building also have, do they have interiors? No. Okay, so I won't be showing them. Yeah, so you basically just have this little staircase and building up, and then, you know, your detail on the roof, because if you're not lazy like me 99% of the time, you will include roof details, you know, your air conditioning unit, all that stuff, maybe a chimney. Now you're wondering, why is this spot empty? Because I'm going to put a building that is a different aesthetic than these, which I basically copied and pasted everywhere. And this is like another old neighborhood, old brick tall building, though this is a little sad in one case because they're very old. They're so old that they predate the elevator. So you basically have a lot of people that have to walk all the way up to like the 7th floor, which really sucks for their legs. But at the same time, you know, old building, maybe I'll have it so that the top 2 floors are just one unit. And then you have like that. So I haven't done the interiors yet, so we haven't done anything. Well, it's just me. Now, this section is the edge of Old Town because it's basically also the edge of where I've developed the city. This is going to be where you have a whole bunch of high-rises, sort of Miami style, because this is going to be the beach. I know it is technically now a beach, but it's going to be a real beach with, you know, tourists and food trucks, all that fun stuff in a road somewhere along here and the beach. I won't do it a high-speed road because if you've ever been to LA, which I'm from Los Angeles, If you've ever driven on the Pacific Coast Highway, you will know that that thing is hell, and whoever designed it needs to be conked in the head, because no, you do not make a normal street that runs through neighborhoods a freaking highway. That is asking for death, and that's exactly what happens on the Pacific Coast Highway. Now, this is where the city actually started. This is the first intersection that I built. The other ones don't actually have lights, or except for one, stop signs yet. But yes, so this is what a complete intersection would look like. You have your little, the crosswalk markings and the bike lane markings. So these big, large boulevard type roadways are going to have nice big bike lanes on either side with bollards to protect them. Whether or not they're plastic or metal, I haven't decided yet, but probably metal because these are somewhat high-speed roads. So yeah, you have your bike lanes on each side for some nice bike action. I will put in like a proper bike path at one point going through the city, but for now I just have it linked up to the road network. In addition, you basically have, the little section demarcating that this is also a turning lane. So unfortunately, bikes do have to share the lane in sometimes. There's also, as you've noticed, the tramway. I haven't added the electric poles, but I did add the little receptacles at the top here. Some of these trees will be removed and replaced with these poles to power the tram, or the streetcar. This is basically just a streetcar. And yes, so down here is a whole tramway, and either every other or every single block, depending on which one it is, you will have a little station here. So you get out of the tram, walk here when the light is red, and then you cross. Because otherwise, you'll be interfering with traffic. But yes, these trains will get signal priority when they're just going straight through. But when they're stopping, they're stopping. There also is, down here, another little old tower. Probably was a church at some point. And yeah, that used to be, one of the tallest buildings in the city. And same thing with the clock tower over there, which is a little taller due to the spire. So you'd have, a bunch of old brick buildings spiraling up. And this is one of my favorite little pedestrianized streets. You have trees going through the middle, but there's still some tall buildings like this one, which you kind of saw before. It's copy and paste. Otherwise, this is still Old Town, and you have all these nice trees making this nice, shaded, and pretty. And then you have, of course, these buildings, which are kind of unique to the area, but otherwise you also have your little courtyard parks, which I love courtyard parks. You should love courtyard parks. They're a little escape from everything. They get nice and quiet, and you also have, kids playing around. These are bike racks right here, and of course you just go through the alley to leave to the main, well, this isn't a main road, but this is a technically major road. It is only one lane each direction. You might be wondering, where do people park? They only park designated spots, and those are usually going to be demarcated with a little bit of concrete. Otherwise, you're not allowed to park here. You can only park if you are a resident, because this is going to be a public transit and biking city mainly. The reason these roads exist is, one, navigation for getting you through a place, and two, just to basically separate everything so you're not just continuous development, and to allow emergency service vehicles through and just transport in general for individual items and stuff. But this isn't going to be the main way you will go around the city. You also, have just so much density in a lot of these places that's really not necessary. So because this is about to go up just a tiny hill, this is actually a very wide sidewalk. Also because a lot of these old buildings predate the grid. The grid was laid out after the city had started, so it was sort of like a retroactive addition. So you would have had like continuous development. Now a lot of the grid system does lay on old roads that used to exist, but they're not always going to fit exactly because a lot of the buildings predate the road itself, except for that main one through the center of the city. That one always existed. Same with the other one that goes north and south. Now coming up here, you basically switch from just townhomes to basically straight up to high rises, even though technically that's a high rise. If I remember correctly, 7 stories is a high rise, 6 is the max for a mid rise, and there's a lot of mid rises and a lot of low high rises, if that makes any sense. So in addition, you have like nice big sidewalks here, but they do quickly narrow as the road stops curving and everything just starts pinching back together. And you have more of these sort of not necessarily courtyards because they're not necessarily surrounded, but they're basically surrounded. You can also see that there are some parking spots here, and that is for people who live here. Not everyone who lives here, but for some people to park. There's also lanterns, which I will add to the rest of the city, or at least parts of it, and they're kind of older, nice, semi-Victorian style. I like the red color. It really, really works in my opinion. And one of my favorite little spots are these little parking spots right here. You know, if you don't have any space and cars are going to occasionally come here, you park here. And there's still not enough parking for everyone because that would require the removing of so many buildings, which is exactly what happened to a lot of cities, not just in America, but in Europe, in Spain, and Spain is Europe. What am I saying? Yeah, big, tall, our first real skyscraper. Yes, this is kind of a skyscraper, but this is our first real beast of a skyscraper that we have encountered. Okay, technically that one, but the height difference is just absolutely crazy. This is a big yellow building. I don't have a name for it yet, but it is tall. This is an absolute beast of a building, and the interior is not touched whatsoever because, of course not, I did not have time to do that, and I will basically just do copy and place floors and all that fun stuff. Though the floors for that, not that building, but where's the blue one? Where did I put the build? Oh, this one. The floors for this one are in fact fully like laid out basically, but you know, there are floors and the staircase is done, but none of the interior detail is done. In addition, most of these buildings don't have yards. Eventually, I will start adding yards to buildings, but this one has a yard, but most of the time you'll just have your community park as your yard. Now, in addition to this building, you also have this little fountain area just to spice things up a little bit, and another skyscraper, and this is just a row of high-rises down this block. How I have it set up is you basically have these mega blocks that are split into a half block, and that basically just demarcates some use, but keeps it from turning into a through street and turns it into a pedestrian area. This is also one of my favorite, though it's mostly copy and paste. This is the rainbow building because it has all these pretty colors. Now you also might have noticed this giant empty spot. This will be a parking structure. I have not had the time or motivation to build it, but this is a full-on parking structure, and it has its entrance on the road here. So you enter one way, exit the other way, and yeah, big, tall, basically a high-rise parking lot. So that's going to be just absolutely massive, and utterly ugly scar on the landscape with all the concrete. But these are all ugly scars on the landscape because they're just a bunch of concrete. And because I'm from California, I feel like I'm legally obligated to add a not Trader Joe's. This is definitely not a Trader Joe's. Yep, there's definitely not the food section for the Trader Joe's over here, with then your cold stuff, and then back to your dry stuff. This is definitely not a Trader Joe's. In addition, it also has this little back section for all the cold stuff when they swap it out into the refrigerated section, because this is definitely not a Trader Joe's. Also back here is technically you have your dumpsters, you have your machinery for the building with the air conditioning and stuff, but it's also the entrance back here to the 2 apartments that are in this building. This one is not furnished, same as the one up there, but you get some really nice big windows, some nice views, and it's really cool to have, you know, mixed use development. It also means that you don't have a tiny little grocery store height-wise next to a literal massive skyscraper. It has some height to it, and it has some, you know, use. Plus, the floors are at slightly different heights as the ones in the skyscraper, so you're not going to have people necessarily looking through your window quite so directly. Now, the plan is that closer and as you get closer to the main center of the city where all the high-rises are, the more cyberpunky it becomes. And this school, yes, that I have done a second school. This is like a college or a high school, but there's so many people here that it's a tower. This school is one of these kind of cyberpunky looking buildings with all the neon stuff looking all cool. And there's even a yard there. I haven't done all the details yet, unfortunately, but that brings us from the school over to here. So as you can see that sort of courtyard thing that I've done with the outer section of the block and the inner section of the block being like a through street for pedestrians. You can use it as a cyclist, though a lot of it is brick, and that's not going to be the most comfortable If you've cycled, you know what that means. You're gonna go bump, 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 bump. It's not that bad. It's fine if you've used to mountain biking. But anyway, this is a museum. I haven't done any interior stuff yet. It literally is still just grass. But this is kind of a modern museum celebrating the history of this town, which used to be a mining town. I will add the open pit mine somewhere back there eventually in the map at one point. Also, it was built after these buildings, so these people have lost their view. But don't worry, they never actually really had one in the first place, because this is the site of where some buildings used to be. So there's that. At least it's like an educational institution now, and there's some nice green space now, and some art installations, which is always nice to have some art in your city, so that you have gathering places and nice places that celebrate the community, instead of just another parking lot. But it could also be ugly art, and in which case, well, it becomes the laughingstock of the city. In this case, I'm sure someone in this universe has done some sort of propaganda art saying this is it's a testament to the greed that they've added a big old museum celebrating the history of the city and replacing a whole community or section of community that used to live there in buildings that are so old that their plumbing is probably made out of lead that is older than the Roman Empire. That's a joke. It's, you know, all these materials are like the same age because they're all belted out in the earth reasons. And here we come to the second half of the block. As you can see, you have your pedestrian walkway through this section, mostly through this section. It kind of cuts through this area right over here. But here we have one of my favorite spots of the city, the kids playground and the little sports area for recreation. This is a little playground with kind of the jungle gym sort of area, and it is fully navigable. It is a little great thing. I had a lot of fun building this. I also had just been to a jungle gym with former neighbor's kids, so that was really cool. There's this little green glass thing. As a kid, I would have loved looking through the world through that area, because this is themed after a jungle, quite of course. And you have all these little navigable little areas, even a slide, technically speaking, and it's themed after, you have the lions. It's cute. And then you have the trenches for kids to run through, which is totally not preparing them to go to Vietnam and World War I. And then, of course, here we have the sports area. So you have some seating for waiting, on either side, and the basketball courts for people to shoot some hoops. Gotta shoot some hoops sometimes. And then, of course, the tennis/pickleball court, or as I like to call it, hell. I'm a tennis player first, and I've never touched pickleball, so that should tell you exactly what I think of pickleball. Also, that thing has the kids area has a sand pit, because of course it's going to have a sand pit for you to get all the sand inside your feet, and they have to refill it every year and clean it, gross, but it's fun. It's a sand pit. It's fun. But once you reach the edge of that block, you're basically proper in downtown. Like, all of this is downtown, but you're like proper in the high-rise section of the city. There's still some shorter old buildings like this one. Kind of silly how narrow it is compared to everything else, but it works. A lot of times in the city, you'll see buildings of wildly different sizes, and so when you're building your own city, you don't have to keep everything really to scale, because in the past, not everything was to scale. Things would be awkward sizes and built to fit in instead of just to strict standards. Now, here is, of course, a parking lot for this building, which I haven't decided if it's an office or an apartment building. You also have these, which are apartments. It's the same copy and paste building you saw before. Now, these are basically for single person, single bedroom, single bathroom, but technically you can fit 2 people in here in the bedroom, but not everyone has a girlfriend or boyfriend, or them to, share a bedroom with, and I'm sure that a lot of people would rather just sleep on the couch. And I'm sure that's happening in this universe, because it always happens in the real world, so this isn't an idealistic world. This is a realistic world made of blocks that are a meter by meter, realism. So yeah, this area basically serves as both the backs to a lot of buildings, access to them for services, and an entrance to another skyscraper made out of glass. And of course you have your contiguous sidewalks. Always best to have contiguous. Are they both? Who cares? Go through, and here we have like all the tall buildings, but also these short ones. So this is a European market, or like German market, or whatever. It's this little low-rise area of the city where you have a fountain and some restaurants and shopping. It's supposed to be like a break from the modernity in the middle of the big city. It's also from the olden days of the city, like an old city center, which has the arches, the fence, and it's really nice to just get a break from the giant skyscrapers every couple meters. Well, not every couple meters, but you know what I mean. So yeah, this area has a whole bunch of restaurants and buildings. I don't think anyone would live in these. I think it's just shopping at both floors. It's like a little shopping center surrounded by more shopping, because the bombs of all of these skyscrapers are going to be shopping. If you're wondering, I haven't had the windows yet because I haven't decided how big the floors are going to be for this one, but this one of course does have windows. It is a tall old building, but they lit it up with neon to make it more cyberpunky, which is super cool. I did have to get higher world height because Minecraft is way too small for a one-to-one recreation of these buildings. It's just not tall enough. And of course, we still have more of those copy and paste buildings, and these are 2-bedroom, 1-bath buildings. They're actually, I think, if you converted the meterage, they are the size of like a large apartment. But because of Minecraft sizes of everything, it's kind of weird. But yeah, so you have 2-bedroom, 1-bath. This is a bathroom with a nice shower. No like bath, you just have a shower. But you know, two bedroom, 2-bath. And then, of course, you have your living room. I guess technically the screen TV would be right here, flat screen. And then you have your kitchen for eating, some storage. Very nice. Big old apartment here. And going back up, yes, there is an elevator shaft in all of these buildings. And a little mixed-use section at the bottom, because, of course, you need to have that in your cities. Because mixed use is very good. It means you can walk to wherever you need to go and have multiple uses for places. Maybe even a dry cleaners, a restaurant, or basically anything you imagine. Even as like an entrepreneur, having mixed use is really nice because you can just have the bottom of the building you own or building you live in be your place of work and operate out of there. Meaning you can start your business there before eventually branching out instead of needing to buy some uber expensive piece of strip mall that is, they just keep upping the rent because they're just greedy little muckers. Now, you might be wondering, what should we put next to a skyscraper? Well, you could go with the towers in the park kind of style of design where you put a skyscraper and you just surround it with parks and isolate it essentially. Don't do that. You can have parks, but also keep it integrated into the community. Yes, it causes a big shadow, but you want to have integration. You want to surround it with buildings, maybe have like slightly offset into some more residential mixed use stuff. That's so that you can have people walking from place to place, and it's not just basically destroying the city with giant like plots of empty land essentially. And here we have how it kind of integrates. So I still haven't completed this section fully. This will have buildings, and this will be another courtyard. And this is just more public, almost park space, or really just landscaping. But yeah, more cyberpunky buildings go through, and this is a kind of newer development area where they wanted to go for a more like rustic feel, rustic style. So you have this modern office building right here, not as tall, but still pretty tall. And of course it is just a giant glass box, but it looks like a cool modern building. So why not have it be a cool modern building? Along with this giant, so this is actually a big tower for a big corporation, inspired by the Aeon Tower, but I'll show you a better view of it later. And you have all these cool brown buildings, but there'll be more of those over there. And then of course you have this sort of dual, oh, I don't have it doing the dual thing here. This is an apartment building, and a lot of times I'll just put them back to back with a small separation in between, and that allows for more high density, nice housing. And of course you have some cool cyberpunky things. So going inside that apartment building that I mentioned, and yes, it is just like this nice, very little 1-bedroom apartment with, you know, you have your bed. No, it's a 2-bedroom, right? Yeah, it's a 2-bedroom family apartment, and it's pretty nice to see, you know, bathroom, all the stuff you really need. Shower, this is the shower. Not as cool as the other shower, all modern, but this one's like older. These are older, maybe 70s style buildings. I should have added lighting in this section. Why did I not think of that? And here we have a very unfinished apartment block, essentially, where you have all of these towers copied and pasted around in a circle. This area will actually have small buildings running down the length of this section, maybe a park right here, and that will, and obviously this will be a park, and that's because these buildings don't have windows, so putting something behind them is good to just have people walking and doing stuff. Though I am a little worried about the crime of this alley once that section is built, because now you have an area that's isolated, and it's long, and it's prime for crime. Or it just won't have anyone in it whatsoever, except for people just entering and leaving, because everyone's going to be right here. A key concept of cities is eyes on the street, and that basically means that everyone is looking after everyone else. Why commit crime when everyone can see you? Now, there is a point where that becomes inefficient, because you have so many people that no one can tell what's going on. But you want to have enough people that criminals don't feel like they're protected by the crowd or protected by the lack of people, you know, to make sure that everyone is safe, and so that you don't have to spend as much on policing, because that's just a big chunk of taxpayer money going to something that could be solved with better community-oriented design. Now, this is what a courtyard for that block would look like when it's complete. You have a nice park in the middle, which I feel like I should add something else, but otherwise it just has this pathway and a fountain and a whole bunch of trees. Nice and relaxing break from all of this gray concrete. And yes, you are looking at some wall art, which I want to add more of throughout the city so that nothing feels too drab. But, you know, people will add art, graffiti, and all that other stuff to cities in reality. I might put a building right here, not entirely sure, but yeah, this is like a little shop thing. I haven't added the interior, but I did add it to another building very similar down the road. And yeah, there's like the edge of it. No trees on this path yet. There'll probably be one soon, like here or here. And here we have, you know, past this little section, an actual through street through a block. So I did break my rule at this time because I wanted to have enough room for people to park. So it's not actually a full through street. Technically, you turn out here to go back to the main road, or you continue through here on this kind of raised street that is basically just used for limo drop-offs for this hotel or office, well, hotel building. And that leads you back to the street again, but it's surrounded by bollards so that you don't get too many conflicts of people driving on the same road as the people who are walking. And this is a in-progress development that I am building. More of the brown buildings with some nice green space. This will have trees eventually. And this path is one of my favorite sections. So this will have trees down the middle of it, or just like general park space. And this will be either a skyscraper or maybe not skyscraper, but like a fairly tall building that's an apartment complex. And then you basically walk through here and end up at this mall, and there'll be mixed use underneath that apartment building as well. So you'll have this giant mall. As you can see, it'll basically be separated into two buildings, that one and the big one. And the big one will also have a nice pathway leading here so that you have like full integration of mixed use at the bottom street plus full concentrated commercial mall with easy access to the locals, which is something that's actually happening a lot in Los Angeles. Even in the suburbs, a lot of the malls like the Oaks Mall and the Northwich Fashion Mall, they have new apartments going up pretty close to them. The only problem is that they're a little too far away, in my opinion, and separated by giant parking lots, but at least its density relatively close to a mall. Here they basically act as one giant unit. Obviously, most of the people aren't going to be in the main commercial mall, but you still have some businesses out here, and who wouldn't want to go through the nice-looking green, rustic feeling street that would just be like really nice to go through? Of course people are going to go through it. So everyone benefits from the sales taxes and everything gets cool and improved. And now let's move back over here. So this through street does have some unique stuff. Each of these three buildings is unique. They're not necessarily inspired by anything, but this one will have, I don't know what it will have. It'll probably just be apartments, but this one is both apartments and a restaurant. Two-story restaurant that is just a nice little corner of the city where you can get some nice views. And don't go up these stairs because it turns into apartments. It used to all be apartments, I think, but they converted the bottom floors into a modern restaurant, which is all pretty cool, and everything's well integrated. Or it's like I think it's adaptive reuse. That's why it's just the you know, all the thing. And then you can see the apartment floors are laid out, but no decorations so far. And then this is a mixed-use commercial building. Yes, it's relatively close to the mall, but it's still a building that will probably see a lot of traffic. So this is inspired by a real building in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles, and that one has like a tech store. That would be over here. So if I go over here, this is going to be like a tech store, Apple store, whatever little thing, and then this will be like the main lobby for getting up. And up here is going to be like some offices, essentially. A pretty nice office building, if I do say so myself. And one of my favorite parts is that for the employees, they actually get a balcony at the top 2 floors. This one is just really cool. The color play is really nice. And I think this is a well-executed example, a little ego pulling right there, of modern architecture. Normally, I am not a modern architecture fan, but I think here it works really nicely because, you know, each section has slightly different textures going up, and with the oaks, it feels natural and it works. I think it feels bright, airy, and comfortable. And over here, of course, we have just a plaza, just some empty space so that you have a break from constant building after building. Even though a lot of it is still just building after building. And this street in particular was inspired by Los Angeles. I'm planning on doing more roads of this width and of this size, but I wanted a place to test it out, and I felt here would be nice. Obviously in LA, you have a lot of these like grass patches, then a little bit of curb, and then you're down on the ground. And then of course you have the rest of the sidewalk, and that's just really common in Los Angeles, and I wanted to implement it here. And I think it's really nice, really pretty, and just gives a nice bit of, you know what, I just realized I never added a crosswalk marking here. Another time! See, I am realistic. Now, this kind of castle-looking building is a bank building. So in here you have the bank. This is the bank vault for just, you know, cash that they give out to the ATMs, which I need to remind myself I should probably add an ATM somewhere. Yeah, and this section looks kind of cut off, and you have the meeting places for each of, like, people meeting, and then you have the waiting area over here. But if you go to the back, you enter through here, and this is going to be either an office building. No, this is going to be an office building. I don't know if it'll be like a bank headquarters building or like a mini headquarters for the area, or just rent it out to another company, but that area will be a like office section. So upper floor is office, lower floor is just full-on bank, and it's next to that hotel. So, you know, if you're coming here for a trip, or if you just got off an international flight and you got bussed over here, you can go to the bank pretty easily, you know, exchange money, all that other fun stuff that's, you know, hyper-realistic. And of course you have your trees for a park, because, you know, you gotta have trees. Oh boy, the maintenance on these sidewalks must be horrendous. You know, in LA, all the sidewalks are completely crooked from the roots of the trees. And while it is kind of covered by clouds, if I can go above the clouds, you can see that this is the VIA building. So this is the little telecommunications office, and they have this totally not Aeon Center building from LA and Chicago, because it is just a big, nicely integrated, tall, skinny building that kind of looks World Trade Center-ish, you know. And you have another cyberpunky building on this main road, but the main thing I want to show you after I've shown you like all of this is the space building, or like the cyberspace building. This is the tallest building in the city, and I didn't want to have like a traditional skyscraper look, so I made it have these weird rings around it to make it feel sci-fi and spacey, and I made it purple to make it fun. Because, you know, it's nice to have some fun, architecturally distinct buildings in your city. And I didn't want to make it just another Burj Khalifa looking thing, or a World Trade Center looking thing. That's this building's job. So this is the ETAN building, or the ITAN building. And this is the second tallest building in the city so far. And oh boy, is this a big one. This is actually basically just slightly smaller than the World Trade Center in reality, if I remember correctly. So that should give you some idea about the scale we're working with. The old building. So no, I will not build an airplane. If you ever suggest it, you're banned. Not that this is a server, this is just a single player world. Yes, this is the ETAN building, and it has that nice little spire. I still haven't done like all the interior stuff yet, or the little elevator to get up here, but I like the spire, and you get some really cool views from the top here. It's really pretty, and you can see our next location back here. So as we go through this little overview so far, what are your thoughts on the city? Leave your thoughts on the comments below, because that'll be cool. And let's talk about the Crown Building. So this is one of the few buildings that actually has just a full-on name. This is the Crown Building, and it's one of the older buildings at like what used to be like the 1800s section area of town, and it's technically just copy paste this, but I always intended this to be turned into a skyscraper. So yes, so this is the big Crown Building, and when they were building it in universe, they realized they had to add this section at the bottom for some extra support, because the company was just copy and pasting. Fun fact, the Empire State Building is a copy of another building that the same team made just a few years earlier, because that's how you build them. You build one thing, and then you take inspiration from that or the basic plans, and then upscale it and build it again, but taller. That's how you kept getting all these dams and all these big construction. You have to keep building, keep the experience in line, otherwise you lose everything, and suddenly things cost 5 times more to even build. And here we have a good example of the sort of dual section apartments just blocked together like this, and these are just all in one sort of development pattern whatever thing, and I wanted to have just a few of them all next to each other. And of course, you know, the Crown Building in the distance right here, and you can see just the scope of this city so far. Voxy, I guess, likes to black things out, but it still is, you know, you have all the buildings, and this is all still in the downtown section. This is only just a mile of city, basically. Basically a mile each way if I bring up the map. Yep. So this section to here, like here to either, I think here to here is a mile, or like just over that right here is a full mile, like mile-ish, and then, yeah, mile, and then this is like another mile. So you have mile by, this is like a 1 square mile city so far, which honestly is not that big in reality. And I love looking at this map because you just see everything, how complex it is, how it's all laid out. Future plans, this section is going to have like a tram line running through it, not on the street, so it won't be a streetcar, but that'll kind of like dip down through here and lead to like the rich Bel Air section over here. And then of course you have your beach area here. Down here is where I'm probably going to be putting the airport. Yes, I will flatten everything to do so, but here-ish airport, and then industrial, yes, beachfront, but you know, you have to if you're at a beach city, you want your airport at the beach so that you can just either fall into the water if anything fails, or just take off without hitting anything. You really don't want to be hitting any skyscrapers. That's a big problem. Like, look at San Francisco. The reason why they don't have as many tall buildings is because there's an airport right in the middle of the city, or at the edge of the city, more or less, and you have everyone coming and going. So you want low rise around your city, well, around your airport, because otherwise there's some major potential conflict points. I think that's it for this video. I will send another update once I've made more progress. It will be a shorter video because, well, it'll be just more in-depth in one section instead of trying to capture the entire city in one video. I personally am a big fan of this skyline so far, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and it just has a lot of complexity and nicety to it, and a lot of density that gives it a unique feeling. It has flavors of cities from all around the world, and hopefully from that it will have its own flavor and be just kind of inspiration to people who want to build cities. Some other things I forgot to mention. This I was intending to be the location of this building, but instead, so far, it's just a blank canvas. I don't know if I'll put a skyscraper here or just turn it into a more residential looking neighborhood or just something else like that. I also still need to add stop signs and stoplights in places, but you know, you have a lot of fun places that will be built. This will be another mall, and I still need to add a couple more schools. Eventually, I want to have like 1 school per block, and also on sports arena somewhere. Don't know where. Those things are huge, so I want to have the city built out a bit more before I even consider adding a full-on sports arena. And while Voxy has kind of messed up the colors overall, I wanted to leave you with a nice view of the skyline. Obviously, eventually it will extend much further, and all the clouds kind of cover a lot of the buildings, so maybe I should head over here. But yeah, you get a very nice view of how dynamic the skyline is for the city, how it just condenses all the way there. And it doesn't just like jut up out of nowhere. It has a big, like, were you moonwalking? Were you moonwalking? I mean, just flying through this city takes a lot of time, and scale-wise, I am trying to do 1-to-1 more or less, and I think that is a very interesting challenge in Minecraft, because everything's, you know, a meter by meter block. But yeah, I am very proud of what I've built so far. It's just so expansive, so extensive, and has so many cute little areas, like these little office park areas with the warehouses, giving like a nice, like, it feels like the city's lived in, that not everything in here is perfect, and that it has a lot of variants and little details and little things, you know, from the pizza shop to just normal buildings like here, and even this eventual plaza, which I'm planning to build out, to this little corridor on either side of these buildings, one that has all these trees that were here a long time ago, giving this very dark but atmospheric little causeway that's not even like an actual through street, to the fact that yes, there's little fountains everywhere to give the city life, because you can tell that the people who live here care about the city. You even have this sort of fence to go through here. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you I cannot speak. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and hopefully this doesn't take like a million years for me to just stick together and edit. My poor computer's memory. Oh man, this is quite the view. I mean, just personally speaking, this is quite the view. In real life, I would enjoy looking out at all of these skyscrapers and just seeing how big and fast the world is. So maybe I'll go up to this building because it has a little balcony at its top spire. Very thin spire. I don't know how people get up here, like a ladder probably. And yeah, just look at all of that. It's cool. There's coolness. There's coolness to cities. Enjoy cities. Love nature. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.